The sun is shining, it's scorching in fact. The bikes are roaring around the UK. A whole new Speedway conversation to be had. Welcome back to 360 Speedway. Hello everyone, Derek Smith here, speaking to you once again from the Oval Office here at 360 Speedway HQ. Another week older, but more Speedway to be talked about. Welcome back and thanks indeed for joining us for episode number 24 of Series 2. Another chance for you to kick back, listen and enjoy in the sunshine as we do all the work. Pleased to say that we are back to full strength this week. So let me introduce this week's posse of Speedway punditry excellence. Easy for me to say. First up this week, he is northern, but not quite as northern as me. Man of many laps, of many clubs, of many tracks, or something like that. It's Robbo, Stuart Robson. Welcome back, Stuart.
Good evening, everybody.
Next up, another man of many clubs. Distance no object back in the day. He loves and he knows his Speedway. Let's welcome back, it's Lawrence here. Good evening, Lawrence.
Good evening.
And completing this week's lineup, the man who rightfully received praise and plaudits for his Bellevue track prep at the recent Grand Prix weekend. Welcome back, the still nicknameless Andy Meredith. Good evening to you, Andy.
Good evening, everyone.
Listen, if anyone out there knows Andy's nickname, we're going to speak to someone in a second who might just have one for. Anyway, collectively this week's handlebar heroes. Usual disclaimer applies. All of the views and opinions expressed by us are those of us as individuals and bear no resemblance to any club, former or past, that we did or currently do have an association to. Okay, on with the nonsense for episode number 24. Welcome. Come on, take a seat. We're kicking things off once again this week with another interview. We're about to speak to a man much older than myself, as you can easily tell. A man who must have thoroughly enjoyed last week than anyone else in the whole world of Speedway. Let's now welcome back to 360 Speedway, Glasgow team manager, CAMI Brown. Good evening, CAMI.
Yeah, good. How you doing, guys?
Much older, CAMI. It's obvious for everyone to see.
I just did.
CAMI, listen, thanks for joining us. I know you're very focused on this week's the challenge that laid ahead on Friday night in the form of the Pool Pirates who visit Glasgow on Friday. We will come back and talk to that shortly. I wanted to start, if you don't mind, by picking up on what was the best week in a long time for you and your Glasgow side. 2 away wins last week at Oxford and at Workington, and solid points contributions from every rider. A team manager's dream, CAMI Brown.
Yeah, we'll start with, if we can start with Berwick on Saturday. We kind of had that one in our hands and kind of threw it away, Derek. We lost 46-44, but I thought we were good value to win that meeting, and we came away from the stadium, had a chat with the boys, and we knew we'd let one go. And when we arrived at Oxford on Wednesday, we had definitely a point to prove. I think the boys rode really well on Wednesday. Freddie Hodder was exceptional, but everybody contributed, as you said. And on Saturday at Workington, it was just a follow-on from the atmosphere on Wednesday night, and we absolutely, we dominated from the start. At Workington, very quickly, 29-13 up away from home, which was a bit surreal. Very quickly, and the boys, they didn't let off, they kept going. So yeah, a really good week for the club. And it's put us in a strong position to try and make the playoffs, which is our first target. And if we make the playoffs, then we see what can happen from there.
CAMI, you know better than most people that when you piece together your 1 to 7 at the start of the season, the top end usually takes care of itself. Subject to injuries and such like. When you introduce a couple of new riders to the side, as you guys did at Glasgow, Mario Housel and Kevin Yule Pedersen, both new to British Speedway, both young guys. Climbing up that Speedway ladder. With hindsight, has there been any point this season where you might have thought that was one gamble too far? If that makes sense, Gavin.
Possibly, but we wanted to give the boys time to gel in. And we could take one at a time. Mario's starting to get there now. He's a young lad. He's got a lot of talent. and he's coming to a foreign country. You know, he's a very young lad. He's not coming with his parents. It's his first kind of step like that, and we had to give the boy time. And he's seen the last 2 or 3 meetings, he's starting to get there. He just needs to do it at home. When he starts getting regular scores at home, I think we've got a really good rider on our hands. Kevin was slightly different. I did a lot of homework in Kevin, and had a lot of people helping me in Denmark with recommending Kevin and telling me what to expect points wise and attitude wise, and they were bang on in both. He's a solid point scorer. He can get better. 100% he can get better. But he's a nice lad to work with, and we want to work with good people. But he's done a very, very good job. Again, it's strange from Kevin because he scores his average away from home's much higher than his average at home. So when we can get him sorted out in Ashfield, I think we've got a really good rider on our hands.
I'm just thinking, Cam, here we are, we're nearly at the end of June, right, which suggests that we're quite deep into the 2026 season. But when you actually analyse the actual number of meetings home and away, the lads, Kevin and Mado, they haven't had that many meetings home and away to establish themselves, really, have they?
No, so especially Mario's part, because he's missed a few with doing European qualifiers and stuff he has to do that it's out with our control. Kevin's missed 1 or 2, but there happens a great deal of meetings. Unfortunately we get knocked out the BSN early, so that we could have done with a few extra meetings there as well, so that wasn't good. But I think a really good winning team gets stronger as the season goes on, and hopefully this week there's signs that that's exactly what's happening at Glasgow, where it's quite a slow start. Thankfully we haven't lost at home. We seem to struggle away from home. I did say the last home meeting in BSN that I thought the performances were coming, and then we went to Berwick and we were very close, and Oxford and Workington were very successful. So we're hopefully starting to turn the corner, but we're not going to rest on the laurels. I think if we think we're there, we'll just we'll end up going back to disappointing results. We don't want that, so we need to keep pushing forward. And the guys know that. So we're ready to go for the next big challenges on Friday against Poole.
Ready to go. Robbo, just to bring you on, looking back to that win at Oxford last Wednesday night, Freddie Hodder was the undoubted match winner, right? An incredible 4-ride paid maximum. He beat Sam Masters. He beat all comers at Cowley last Wednesday. You know Freddie and his dad quite well, Robbo, so you must have been particularly pleased to see the young man get that particular score last week.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, he's. So I watch his scores. I do. I look at the updates, and he's putting a couple of points here and there, and then every now and again he has a little bit better. But then he'll have another bad one, but then to see that was brilliant. I was so pleased for him. Yes, it was excellent. 4-ride bid maximum is pretty impressive. Really, it's really pleased for him.
CAMI, at the other end of the spectrum, I guess, supporters watching this, Glasgow or otherwise, they will be disappointed if I didn't ask you out loud about the indifferent form of Chris Harris. Glasgow #1 and skipper. Everyone knows what Chris Harris is capable of. We know what his own high standards, what he's able to achieve and how his scoring normally is. He has been a bit inconsistent this season, if I can describe it that way. That must have caused you some concern, Cami.
I suppose it has done from time to time, but Chris is more upset about that than anyone else. And I see the hurt on him when he doesn't think he's produced what we all know he can do. And I'm sure I spoke to him yesterday, and we had a chat, and I said, listen, it's coming again. You've had some good scores. Yes, you had a couple of disappointing scores this week for us, but you've had some good scores elsewhere, and we're down at Poole. Bomber was back to his best. So again, I think it's just certain tweaks he needs to do, and he'll be back to his best again. I've no major worries with him, Derek. To be honest, I think when it comes to the big fixtures, I think you'll see the big performances coming out from Chris. Hopefully that starts on Friday, when he knows that he has to produce on Friday, to give us a chance of winning that meeting. So. It's when you put Chris under pressure, that's when I think you get the best Chris available. Just quickly touching bases about Freddie on Wednesday. Freddie actually set an incredible record since Tigers were started in 1946. We've never had a reserve getting a paid maximum at championship level away from home in our history. So he's the first Glasgow rider ever to get a paid maximum or a maximum at reserve away from home in a full championship fixture. So I told him that the other day, and he was really, really chuffed with that. So he's got a little piece of his own history, Glasgow Tigers history there. But I'm not worrying about Chris. I think Chris will come towards the end of the season, hopefully sooner rather than later. He's too talented not to. He still wants it too much. So I think he's a few machinery problems as well. Not excusing that, but when we get that sorted out, I'm sure we'll have a real Chris back.
I'm sure that will be the case, and that's a sensational piece of information about Freddie Horder, given that the Glasgow Speedway is 80 years old this very season, so quite something, Freddie Horder. CAMI, you touched on it, eliminated from the BSN series after a very bright start to the group stage, and from the Knockout Cup in the first round, which was the quarter-final. Fair to suggest that this season hasn't remotely gone to plan, CAMI Brown?
No, and again, I think it was down to the fact that, maybe we had some new kids in the team, and they took a bit of time to gel. I think if we had those two fixtures again now, I think we might see a completely different result in both. I'd hope to think we would. Now the guys have gelled in a bit, Kevin's more settled. See Mario scoring regularly now, and Freddie's contributing. I think you've got to say Sam Hagan in the last 4 or 5 meetings has turned the corner as well.
Yes.
Sam was another new rider we had this season, and we had big hopes for Sam at reserve, and he's punched his way into the main body of the team. And I think since he's gone to number 2, he's actually done better than he has at reserve. Sam's another one that's come on to a bit of form, and if he can keep that going, it makes us much stronger.
Last week, CAMI, we did a feature discussion last week where we, based on actual results home and away over the course of the season so far in the championship, we used that we used the actual results to and the opposition that clubs have faced to suggest, based on that forum, where they might finish at the end of the season. All things being equal and nothing changing, right? And it was a bit disappointing for me to have to say out loud last week that, based on current form, as was, Glasgow might struggle. They're certainly far from favourites to make the playoffs. However, those two results that we just talked about at Oxford and Workington have transformed that. So would you, CAMI Brown, suggest that, all things being equal, Glasgow might just now be a shoo-in for the playoffs?
No, I wouldn't say that, because if you look at all the other teams, there's just no weak teams in our league. I think Oxford are struggling a little bit, but I don't think anyone expected us to go and have such a big win at Workington, because Workington at home are very good. Scunthorpe have been remarkable. They've had some remarkable results so far this season, and everybody wrote them off at the start of the season. Edinburgh are strong. There's so many strong. Poole are strong. There's so many strong teams. Berwick are a good side as well. So no, I'm not saying we're a shoe into the playoffs, but I think now if we can sort out our home form and make sure we don't drop too many points at home, if at all any, I think we've got a good chance of making the playoffs. And as I said, that's the first target at the start of every season, Derek, to make the playoffs, because then you reset. I mean, it doesn't matter if you finish 4th, 2nd, 3rd. I mean, the year we won the league in 23, I think we finished 2nd. We did finish 1st that year, but we've been in a final before 19 when we finished 2nd, and should have won it. So it doesn't make a difference where you finish. You just got to be in that playoffs, and you start 0-0. It's 2 fixtures, and it's just trying to get there. But there's 8 other good teams trying to get those 4 slots. So it's I said in interviews at the start of the season before the race, I've never seen a more competitive league.
Yeah.
None even our riders we had a chat about camp, none of them could predict what 4 teams would get to the playoffs. Whereas this time, before the season, last season, it was pretty much I looked at the teams and thought ourselves, Poole and Redcar would be 3 out of the 4 teams, and that proved to be the case, because on paper they looked so much stronger than the other ones. I don't think that's the case this season. Every team has strengths and weaknesses. Makes it very interesting, to be honest.
I agree with that. Lawrence, we've talked about a couple of the Glasgow reserves: Freddie Hodder, Sam Hagan, Mario Hauso, and that's Glasgow. But one of the interesting things about Speedway is one rider, be it a reserve, second string, if that one rider can find some remarkable form, sometimes a rider can single-handedly transform and turn around a club season, and that's one of the fantastic things about them. Cami, I want to ask you about being team manager at Glasgow. The club has been, I'm going to use the word again, it's been transformed beyond all recognition. You and I have been over the course as Glasgow fans for our whole lifetime. The club's been transformed over the past decades since coming under ownership and management of the Pacenas. Is it fair to suggest, Cami, that expectations around Glasgow Speedway from the top down are higher potentially than you might find at most other clubs?
I think that's a given, Derek. Expectations are very high at Glasgow, and that's the way we want it to be. From the top boys that own the club, to myself, to Andy, the track staff, to all the officials. Alan Dick works so hard behind the scenes, and expectations are high. But I keep saying to some of the fans that say, we still have to work with the same points limit as everyone else. There's no magic formula. If I could go and sign the best 7 riders, we'd be sitting 8 titles in a row. By now, that's not Speedway, and we don't want that. But we do have to still, play with the same rules as everyone else. They can say that our owners are quite well off, and we don't have financial worries at the club, which is great. But that doesn't mean that you still have to work to 40 points for 7 riders. So that's the vital part of the season. But yeah, expectations are very high, and that's the way we want it to be. We don't want our standards to drop. I know I speak to Andy a lot, and we have good chats after meetings, and if we think things haven't gone well, I'm not just talking about the track. We have general chats about things. We try and make sure we do things to improve. I talk to Alan all the time, talk to Peter Fazena, and if there's anything that needs improving, we try and do it. No club's perfect, but we try and be as good as we possibly can. It's a different. You and I knew the club prior to the Fazenas being there. It was a totally different club. We're far more professional now, and a lot of the riders that come up say, they see that, and guys that ride for us say that, but we've got to keep that going. We can't kind of let our standards drop at all, Derek. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Yes, the expectations are extremely high.
Andy, you come in on that if you don't mind. You've been track curator for a few seasons now, so I guess relatively fresh eyes across the landscape at Glasgow Speedway. Andy, what's your perception, Andy Meredith?
I think it's a great club to be part of, and I'm very, very honoured to be, preparing the track there. They do have high expectations for sure, but you just have to walk around the place and you just feel a real good buzz. From the fans, to the riders, to CAMI, and it's just everybody is just sort of really, upbeat about everything, and it's what you want. When you walk into a stadium, it's a real homey place, and everybody that comes there always made to feel extremely welcome. From whether it's Kerry looking after people in the den or whatever it is out there. There's just a real great feeling around the place, and like I say, I'm very honoured and very privileged to be part of the club.
Thank you, Andy. Cami, very obviously, as we've touched on, Glasgow can only chase down the league title this year, which is always the biggest prize of all in any season. I'm just thinking, there's been a couple of times in recent years where we literally could not have got any closer to winning the league title. 2019 and 2025 instantly spring to mind. But the record books, Cami, will show that in the last decade, Glasgow have only won 3 team trophies in that 10-year period. How much of a personal frustration is that to you, Cami?
It's massive. If you saw me, after even 2018 when we lost the semi-final at Workington, and we get a ridiculous decision against us that cost us the meeting at the end of that second leg at Workington. The referee's never refereed a match since. Kind of tells its own story. We were asked to go and reset their test. It was that bad, and they refused. So looking back, even from 2018, I thought we'd a great chance of winning the title then. We're so close in 2019, and we get close in 2022, a little bit, 2022, we were quite close in 23. Obviously, we won it 25. Losing it to a super heat was difficult to take. It's I take it quite personally because it's my club and I love the place, and we want to do everything we can to be successful. But we've come up against probably the most successful club in the last 20 years, 30 years in British Speedway with Pool, and they've got that winning mentality that comes with winning regular trophies. I think that may well have turned had we won last year in the final. We'd have won 2 leagues out of the 3, that 3 seasons, and that might start swinging our way until we start being serial winners. That's got to happen, and that's got to happen eventually before we can become. But go back to what your point is. Yeah, it's very frustrating that we haven't won more, but we've been so close. And it's not for the lack of effort and the want of trying from the riders that all the teams have had over the years. We've come so close. We've been in every playoffs bar one since I've been team manager, and that's something that I hold quite dearly to my heart, and we want to keep that going this season. But getting that final step takes a lot of effort, and you need that little bit of luck as well. And I think over the course of the years we've had a little bit of bad luck when it came to the final matches. But sometimes you make your own luck, and hopefully that evens itself out eventually, and we can start winning a few more things. It's certainly something I'd love to do for the club. But again, it's not down to me. I'm team manager. It's down to the whole background staff that we have. We've got a brilliant staff. We talk about Andy. Andy does great tracks for us. But don't let him kid you on. I see Andy stressed. If you want to see me stressed, you've seen me stressed during a meeting, Derek, many times. I see Andy stressed and worrying about if the weather's going to hold, if the track's the right way, the guys want it. So we all take it really seriously. It's my sport, and we want to be successful, but that takes a lot of effort from everyone. It's not just 1 or 2 people doing it. At Glasgow, we've got a whole group of people that pull the same direction. That's what you need in a club. We've got that, and we just need to push that little final bit.
Keep pushing. Hope you're enjoying the discussion at home. Please do take a second, literally, to hit that little thumbs up button below. It really does help the channel. If you don't do it for me, do it for CAMI. CAMI, a big question. In your eyes, how has the sport changed in your lifetime? Like I said, we've been over the course pretty much the same length of time, I think, as Glasgow fans. What do you see or not see these days that never used to be the case, if that makes sense?
It's changed massively in my time, Derek. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Can you hear you?
I would use one rider who's in my Glasgow Tigers 1 to 7 all-time great. Stevie Lawson is a good example. I've known Stevie since almost day one when he was at Glasgow. Stevie was a brilliant rider, one of the best and one of the greatest. If not, he is the greatest Glasgow Tiger I've ever known in my lifetime. But he was a part-time speedway rider. He was a farmer and a speedway rider, and things are far more professional now than they used to be. Machinery is better. It's perhaps even too fast nowadays, to be honest. But looking to someone like Stevie in our generation, when we were watching the Tigers, Derek, and we were fans, people he would go and do his farm work and then he'd go and race speedway. Yeah. These guys aren't like, they're full professional now. The whole outlook, the fitness, the eating, how they look after themselves, it's all different. It's all completely different. That's the way the sport had to go. It still could be more professional, but it's a massive difference from even looking back in the early 70s. And when I really started watching Speedway, for me, it's completely different. Yeah,
I told you he was a lot older than me in the early 70s. We seem to have lost Andy Meredith, so don't panic. We'll try and get Andy back as soon as we can. CAMI, we all managed to muddle through and survive what was a very turbulent winter. But once more, we've come to tapes this season with a 6-club top flight featuring Northampton now and a 9-club second division. In your view, CAMI, how much could our sport benefit from having just another handful of clubs, CAMI, on board?
Mentioned it to Alan Dick at Workington on a Saturday. There's always rumours about clubs and things, and I said to Alan, we can't afford any more clubs not to be there. We hope that clubs like Coventry will come back into the fold one day, maybe Swindon one day in the future. I'd love to see more clubs back in British Speedway in both leagues, because the way things are going, one of these days it's going to be one league. And that's going to be, if that happens, that's going to be make or break for British Speedway, in my opinion. It might work if that ever came to fruition. It might work. It might be successful. But at the moment we've got 2 leagues, and it seems to work. It'd be great to have the top league having, say, 2 more teams, have eight teams in that league. I think when they had 5 teams, it was I just couldn't get why you would race the same teams every second or third week. That would be boring to me. I like the championship where you go into different clubs and you're having different clubs visiting. That's the way it should be in Speedway. But I hope no more clubs go to the wall. And hopefully we can get a few more clubs coming back in. Missed Somerset greatly; they were a brilliant club, and clubs like Newcastle were there so long. And I used to love going down to Newcastle and pitting my wits against them, or when before as team manager, just go and support the Tigers down there. It was really good. So we don't want any more clubs to fold, and having a few more clubs come back into the picture would be absolutely brilliant for Speedway.
Personal view, Cammy, should Glasgow be racing in the top flight? Would you like to see that?
I'd love if Glasgow were in it one day. I've got to be honest. That's my dream. I've said to Alan and Alan Dick and I have had that discussion many a time, and I think Alan feels exactly the same way. It's trying to persuade the Fazenda family to do that. Hopefully one day. They promised me if we won the league, they would consider it. We won the league in 23, and I phoned Peter the next day and said, "Well, we won the league. Can we go to the other league?" He said no. So we'll have to try and get him tied into a contract if we win the league again. We'll go up. But as I say, I think this at the end of this season, there's got big decisions to make in Speedway to see where we lie. In both leagues, whether it's worth continuing with both leagues or go one league. I'd love to see the 2 leagues continue and have a couple more clubs joining in. That would be the right way for me, because I think the championship's a great grounding point for up and coming British riders that ride in the National League to step into the championship. There's exceptions to the rule. Cooper Rushton, who's an exceptional talent who can seem to jump into the elite league almost straight away. There's not many young British riders can do that successfully. I think the championship's a great learning curve for them. It's a much harder league than a lot of people assume. I'll look back to Ben Bassel coming over to race for us, and he realised quite quickly that it wasn't going to be as easy as he thought it would be, and he had to adapt to that quickly, and he did. But it's a much harder league to race in than people assume, and the quality of racing, spread over the 2 leagues, I think the quality of racing in the championship's actually better than the Premiership, because sometimes the Premiership you've got 2 boys that aren't quite the standard of the other 2 in the race. Championship level, all 4 riders seem to be pretty, by and large, they're pretty close, and I think it makes for more exciting racing, to be honest.
Yep.
But that's just the way it's got to be. There's no other way of doing it. But I'd like to see both leagues be retained. But yes, I'd love to see Glasgow in the Premiership one day. I'd like to manage them in the Premiership and see how that went, but we'll have to wait and see if that happens.
Never say never. Cammy, I gave you a little bit of homework today, didn't I, the last couple of days? So I asked Cammy to take part in our recent discussion to piece together his all-time 1-7 Glasgow team, based on riders who have actually raced for Glasgow and who Cammy has actually seen ride for Glasgow. So he's probably going to go way back to 1946 or something. But Cammy,
I don't think so.
Come on, Cammy, here's your big moment. Tell us for your personal all-time 1-7.
I've started from the mid-70s onwards, really, to be fair. So no particular order, we'll just do 1-7. Number 1, the greatest ever Glasgow rider, we just mentioned him, Stevie Lawson. For me, I'm going to have Chris Harris in that team as well, and I'm just going to put number 2, as I say, no particular order. Joe Screen would come in. Benjamin Bassel as well. In my time, has been one of the most exciting riders for Glasgow, an absolute brilliant rider and a championship winning rider. Shane Parker, who was absolutely wonderful, and you've saw many times. Derek at Glasgow, he was an amazing rider. Rasmus Jensen is another one, and I'm picking these riders on the best, at their best
Yes.
possible form. And Rasmus Jensen for us in 2019 was, I think he was the rider. Him and Craig Cook were the two best riders in the league by a country mile. And the last rider in my 1 to 7 is Nigel Crabtree. He'd be the club captain. I don't think we've had a better club captain in our history than Nigel. Nigel, captained us to 2 successive league titles, and he was a very, very good rider in his own right. He almost both seasons had a 9-point average, and all those guys. If you do that 1 to 7 now, I think you could hand Glasgow all the trophies in both leagues. I think I'd win both leagues. And I've got a couple of. I also picked 3 riders that came very close in my mind. You've got Craig Cook, who had two and a half seasons of absolutely. 3 seasons, of absolute amazing racing for Glasgow, and was virtually unbeatable.
Yeah.
Another one that springs to mind that I loved watching for Glasgow was David Walsh, a very underrated rider who again was pivotal in us winning the league title 2 years in a row. And one of my good friends in Speedway, still speak to him, Robert Nagy, who was ultra brilliant around that time. There's 2 or 3 lads from the 92 league winning team in that squad. They were my top picks. There's many others like James Greaves would be come into the reckoning as well. But that 1 to 7, I think would beat anything that we could put in front of it.
It's a difficult thing to do, Cam. So thanks for playing along, and that's a bit of an impressive team. And I tell you what, Mr. Modesty himself, Nigel Crabtree, he'll be chuffed to have made your top 7. So Crabby, have a big smile if you're watching. Cami, listen, we're nearly there, and then we'll let you go. Is there any other club, Cami, that you would admit to on 360 that you might have a bit of a soft spot for, enough that you one day might want to manage them even? And I would love if you said Edinburgh. I'd love if you said Edinburgh.
I don't think they'd have me. There's a lot of clubs going well with. I mean, as I mentioned, Somerset before, who aren't there now. Somerset are a long way away from where I live, obviously. But if I wasn't managing Glasgow and they were still going, and I could possibly do it, there's a club I'd like to manage. It was a well-run club and a lovely track, and their backroom staff were tremendous. It needed to be the right people at that club, and I'm lucky at Glasgow. I've got really, really good people around me, which makes things a lot easier. I think if you look at football terms, a manager doesn't go to a club if he's not comfortable with who he's working with, if he's got any common sense, and that would be the biggest equation. But there's a lot of teams I've got a lot of respect for, and there's no teams that I dislike. I couldn't see myself being Edinburgh team manager. It's not that I wouldn't do it. I just don't think they'd have me somehow. But no, listen, I wouldn't give it any other thought. To be honest, my whole thoughts purely on Glasgow. And if I stopped doing it, I don't think I'll be doing it for anyone else, to be honest, unless it's something very unusual.
And to round off, Cami, where we started, we talked about Poole visiting Ashfield this Friday night for the first time since that epic playoff final that we all remember and will always remember last October time. They are a phenomenal side once again. I think they've only lost 3 meetings out of 14 or something like that, Cami. They do what they say on the tin. The Poole Pirates, they come and they plunder points home and away, really. But a big effort required by the Tigers. It's so important from your point of view not to lose the momentum and the advantage that we gained from those 2 away meetings last week.
100%. But as you said, Derek, Poole seemed to be that little bit ahead of everyone else in the championship this season. The 2 young boys they've got, Cooper and William, have made a difference. Let's be honest, they've made a huge difference. If you look at I sometimes look at what they've done for the club just in the matches they've raced this season, not the rolling averages. I think the Poole Pirates current team sits on 54 points, so that's quite frightening prospect. But we're not going to be frightened come Friday. We've got to meet the challenge ahead. And I'm confident that if all my riders ride to their best ability, we can get a result on Friday. It's going to be extremely difficult. We know that. I think the bonus points probably beyond us. It'd be nice to beat Poole by 21. But listen, if we get any kind of win at all on Friday, I'll be a very, very happy man. But to do that everyone, all the 1 to 7, have to really contribute. I mean, I know William's not. He's not riding in the meeting on Friday night. He's having to do a qualifier. So at guest reserve, we get Jordan Jenkins, and if you see how well Jordan Jenkins has been going, and he basically won the match for Berwick against us almost single-handedly that night. So they're not any weaker with Jordan guesting at reserve than they would have been if William been there. So we know the magnitude of the challenge ahead. As I said, I've already spoken to the riders this week. We had a quick chat after Saturday at Workington, and I immediately switched their heads onto this coming Friday. Said, boys, you've got to bring your A game on Friday, because if we don't, we won't get the result, and one of those away wins will count for nothing. We don't want to go down that route again, because then we'd have to push to try and get another away win. Well, we want to get more away wins anyway, it goes without saying, but we need to maybe try and get another couple of good results away from home to make the playoffs. We'd be forced to, so we don't want to let up on Friday night, and we don't intend to.
Cammy Brown, listen, a pleasure speaking to you as always. Thanks for taking time to speak to us on 360 Speedway, and good luck for the rest of the campaign.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Next to you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Cammy. Quick reminder that next week we will be bringing you another 360 Live. Yes, it's the final week of the month. We will be 100% live, giving you the chance to watch and comment along with us. Do get yourself involved. So that will be 360 Live on Facebook one night next week. Watch out for our social media early part of next week, and we will confirm the when and the where. But we're currently thinking is it might be next Wednesday night from 7:30 till 9 p.m. to be confirmed. Please stay with us for Fans Pulse Lap 2. No need to do anything, as we will be having a round up and rant.